I've been going through some of the comments today, and there's one from a person called Vanessa Ford who says, typical threats of World War III. I've lost count how many times Putin has threatened to use his nuclear weapons. Well, this remark, made with a kind of weary accuracy, captures the saturation effect of Moscow's nuclear rhetoric. When a threat is repeated so often, it risks becoming both normalized and dismissed, which is precisely what makes it so dangerous. From the outset of the Ukraine war, Putin has made nuclear allusions part of his diplomatic arsenal. On the 24th of February 2022, launching the invasion, he warned of consequences never seen in history. Only days later, on the 27th of February, he raised Russia's nuclear alert level and changed the way in which the nuclear bombs are jettisoned. These are not idle words, but calculated signals designed to deter NATO from deeper engagement. By September 2022, as Russia annexed Ukrainian territory, Putin said, if the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, we will certainly use all means at our disposal. This is not a bluff. At the same time, his protege, Dmitry Medveydev, chimed in, claiming that any weapon, including nuclear, could be used to defend annexed lands. Together, the two statements codified nuclear threats into the very logic of Russia's expansion. On the 19th of November 2024, Putin formally revised Russia's nuclear doctrine. Previously, nuclear use was reserved for existential threats to the state. The new formula lowered that threshold, and certain conventional attacks on Russia or on Belarus could now invite a nuclear response. That is not casual rhetoric, but institutional re-engineering and terror. If Putin's threats are cold and doctrinal, Medvedev's are flamboyant and unhinged. In July 2023, he promised nuclear use if NATO-backed offensives succeeded. In October 2023, he menaced British troops in Ukraine. In 2025, he even invoked the Soviet dead hand system, suggesting automated retaliation. Medvedev's role is that of the court jester with a warhead. He said, I'm not sure where he's holding it. He says the unsayable, so Putin doesn't need to. The threats do not stop at politicians. Russian state television indulges in what can only be described as nuclear pornography. Dmitry Kiselyov said Britain and Ireland could be plunged into the sea by a Poseidon torpedo. Andrei Gurilevyov imagined obliterating the British crown. Vladimir Solovyov, the most theatrical of all, said Russians would go to heaven while they will simply croak. Here, the point is not strategy, but spectacle, terror as television entertainment. So, why are there so many threats? Vanessa Ford is correct to say that she's lost count, but that itself is the strategy. Nuclear threats serve multiple purposes. First of all, they are attempts at dissuasion, warning NATO not to escalate. They are domestic theatre, keeping the Russian population cowed. And they are some form of diplomatic leverage, ensuring that any negotiation occurs in the shadow of Armageddon. Repetition is not weakness, it is part of the psychological war. But here is the paradox. The more the Kremlin threatens, the less credible these threats become, the more they ring hollow. NATO has continued arming Ukraine despite the warnings. The United States, Britain and Europe have crossed every supposed red line. HIMARS, Storm Shadows, F-16s without provoking nuclear war. The wolf has cried too often to be seriously considered. Yet dismissing the rhetoric entirely would be foolish. The real danger, is not that Putin plans an apocalypse tomorrow, but in the moments of battlefield desperation or domestic collapse, both of which highly possible, his lowered nuclear threshold could tempt reckless escalation. Nuclear ambiguity, once a stabilizer, is now a destabilizer. In the Cold War, deterrence relied on rare nuclear threats that carried weight. Today, Moscow's incessant nuclear chatter resembles the cheap propaganda of a fishwife. Imagine if Kennedy in 1962 had gone on television every night threatening to nuke Moscow. It would have been unserious and therefore unstable, and that is where Russia is now. So, Vanessa Ford is right. We have lost count, but we should not lose sight Every threat, each threat, however inflated, is part of a strategy to normalize the idea of nuclear use, to blur the boundary between the conventional and the nuclear war. And the task of the West is therefore twofold: to resist being intimidated and to ensure that deterrent diplomacy and democracy remain firmer than Russia's bluff. Nuclear weapons are not just bombs, they are narratives, and they are terrifying narratives. Putin wields them as words first, and words, when repeated, can be as corrosive as radiation.